Human, I will give you whatever you ask. I will do whatever you need. Just please, Burl, my children are cold. Nobody's asking you for anything. Can you stand?
The snow had been falling since mid-morning and showed no sign of stopping. Marin was stacking the last of the firewood against the cabin wall when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong to wind or animal or the usual language of a winter night alone on the outer settlement. He straightened, turned, and looked toward the tree line. Three shapes, low and slow and stumbling. He was across the yard in 20 seconds. She was on her knees in the snow by the time he reached her. A young woman with blue skin and dark hair plastered flat against her face, and two children clinging to her sides, and a third dragging himself forward a step behind the rest. They were all blue. All cold in a way that had nothing to do with their natural coloring. The kind of cold that meant they'd been out in this for hours. She looked up at him and he saw her eyes, dark and wide and carrying the particular weight of someone who has used up every other option and arrived at the last one. "Human," she said. Her voice was rough with cold. "I need." And then she stopped. He watched her stop. Watched her swallow whatever she'd been about to say and replace it with something harder and more painful to get out. "My children," she said. "Please. My children are cold." He got them inside. That was the first thing and the only thing that mattered in the first 10 minutes. Get them through the door, get them near the fire, get the wet off them. He had spare blankets in the chest at the foot of the bed, and he pulled them all out without counting. The children went to the fire like they were drawn there, the two youngest pressing as close as they could get without touching the grate, and the third, the boy who'd been trailing behind, sat down on the hearthrug and put his forehead on his knees and simply stopped moving. The woman stood in the middle of the room and dripped snow onto the floorboards and looked at him. She was trying to read him. He could see it, the careful assessment, the watching for the moment he'd ask what she was offering in return, the bracing for it. He handed her a blanket and went to put water on. Her name was Vale. She told him while the children slept. All three of them piled together near the fire under two of his blankets, tangled and still and finally warm. She sat at the table with both hands around a clay mug and told him in the careful, even tone of someone who has rehearsed being honest about terrible things. Her husband had died in the second wave of the border sickness 8 months ago. She had managed through summer. Managed well enough, she said, with a quiet pride that made clear she did not use that word lightly. But the settlement where her people had been permitted to stay had been cleared. Humans expanding infrastructure, new roads, new posts. The alien quarter dissolved. Move or be moved. She had moved. North because north was where no one was pushing yet. She had 3 children in a cart and made it 6 weeks before the cart broke an axle in a frozen rut, and she couldn't fix it alone and couldn't carry everything and couldn't leave anything behind because everything she had was in that cart. "I found your lights 2 days ago," she said. "I kept the children moving. I didn't want to come here." "Why not?" She looked at the mug. "Because of what I would have to ask." He was quiet. "I heard what humans ask for," she said carefully. "When one of us comes alone. When we have nothing." She didn't look up. "I was prepared to offer it. Whatever you required. For them." A slight tilt of her head toward the sleeping children. "They are all I have left. I will do what I have to do." The fire crackled. Outside, the snow came down soft and steady. "I'm not going to ask you for anything," Marin said. She looked up then. The dark eyes direct and searching and not quite believing. "You came in out of the cold," he said. "That's all that happened tonight." She didn't believe him for 3 days. He could feel it. The watchfulness, the way she positioned herself between him and the children at every moment, the way she went still whenever he moved suddenly or spoke too directly. She was waiting for the cost. She had learned somewhere that there was always a cost, and that the longer it wasn't named, the worse it would be when it finally was. On the third day, the youngest child, a girl 6 years old, who had told him her name was Sophie and then immediately asked to see if he had any animals, brought him a rock she'd found in the yard. Blue-gray and smooth, small enough to fit in a palm. She put it on the table in front of him with enormous seriousness. "For the blankets," she said. "It's a good rock." He looked at the rock. He looked at the child. "It's a very good rock," he said. "Thank you, Sophie." She nodded once, gravely, as if this concluded a formal exchange, and went back outside. He looked up and found Vale standing in the doorway watching. And something in her face, very quietly, without announcement, let go. Not all of it. Not even most of it. But a thread of the tension she'd been carrying since she'd walked through his door released. And he saw what was underneath it. Exhaustion mostly. The bone-deep kind. And under that, very carefully kept, something that had once been hope and hadn't entirely given up yet. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't offer it as a transaction or a trade or a negotiation. He said at the end of the first week that the cabin had a second room that wasn't being used, and that winter was not a good time to travel north with 3 children, and that he had work the older boy could help with in the mornings if he wanted something to do. Vale stood in the kitchen and looked at the table where all 3 of her children were eating something hot for the 3rd time in 7 days, and she said nothing for a long moment. "You're not afraid of us," she said finally. "Most humans are." "I'm not most humans." "No," she agreed. She looked at him with those dark eyes that had gotten slightly less guarded every day. "You are not." He stayed. The children stayed. Sophie collected 17 more rocks over the course of winter, all presented with the same formal gravity, all accepted with equal seriousness. The boy, whose name was Tav, turned out to be extraordinarily good at fixing things, better than Maren had ever been, and spent 3 weeks in the spring rebuilding the fence without being asked.